There are things you try to forget, but it's no use, like dust from a dirt road. It sticks to you and won't come off no matter how hard you scrub. I'm Catherine, born in Millfield in the heart of Alabama in 1957, where the sun beats down mercilessly and time teaches you to be strong. Today at 68, I look back and see a life that was hard as cracked earth in a drought, but that made me who I am. This is the story of a woman who lost everything except the courage to keep going. My destiny was forced upon me before I even knew what I wanted. I grew up hearing that women had to keep their heads down, accept whatever came, and be grateful. But what hurt me most wasn't what they took from me. It was what I had to leave behind myself. My daughter. My flesh and blood. And to this day, that wound hasn't healed. Now, years later, I'm here with my heart in my hands, returning to face everything I left behind. Is there still hope for me? Does a mother's love conquer all? If you've ever had to make a choice that tore you apart, this story is for you. Comment below where you're listening from and subscribe to the channel, because this story will move you. I was born in a little wooden house that looked more like it was made of matchsticks, right in the dusty heart of Millfield. The roof had more holes than an old rag, and when it rained, we'd have to run around putting buckets under the leaks. My father, Mr. Antonio, was a rough man with heavy hands and a hard stare. My mother, Mrs. Marina, lived in silence, always looking at the ground as if waiting for time to pass. Hope was rare there, survival. That's what we knew well. From childhood, I knew women didn't have choices. At 15, on a blazing hot day, my father pushed me to the altar with a man I'd barely seen before. He was older, smelled like whiskey, and had eyes that were always half closed and suspicious. "Now you're a married woman," was all I heard, and just like that, my life stopped being mine. I tried to think maybe I could get used to it, that marriage was just like that. But on the first night, I learned what real fear was. My husband beat me because I cried. The next day, he beat me because I didn't cry. And so it went, day after day. I no longer knew what it was like to live without fear. At 17, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I didn't recognize, thin, with sunken eyes, carrying sadness like someone carrying a sack of corn on their back. My body was just skin and bones. My soul seemed smaller each day. My face always swollen, my eyes deep and dull. Time there seemed frozen, as if each day was the same as the last, and I knew if I didn't escape soon, I'd end up dying right there. It was on a hot night, with my face still burning from another slap, that I found the courage to run. The moon lit the path, but my heart was dark, racing with fear. Each step I took felt like a risk, but the biggest risk was staying. The woods made noise with the wind, and every sound made me freeze, but I kept going, barefoot, clothes torn, soul in pieces. I ran and ran without looking back, but not knowing the worst was yet to come. I walked until my legs gave out, stomach churning with hunger. I hitched rides with anyone who'd take me, slept leaning against gas stations, drank water from faucets. When I reached a big city, I thought I was saved. But freedom without direction isn't freedom. That's when I saw Grace, tall in a red dress and a smile of someone who'd seen too much. "You lost, honey? Come with me." And I went. My biggest mistake. Grace took me to a place that smelled of cigarettes, cheap perfume, and lies. "Here you can start over," she said, adjusting her earrings. I only understood what she meant when I saw the women sitting at the bar, men looking at them like someone choosing meat at the butcher shop. There, women didn't have names. They had prices. I sat on a stool not knowing what to think while Grace lit a cigarette and looked at me sideways. "Scared, aren't you?" She released the smoke slowly. I didn't answer. "Don't worry, honey. Life here ain't good, but at least it's a life." You'll have food, a roof, you'll have people who protect you. Out there, nobody gives us nothing. I swallowed hard. Out there, I was alone. But here, I didn't even know who I was anymore. The smell of alcohol and cigarettes permeated everything. Dark corners where I heard muffled crying from the rooms. There, silence meant death, and I was dying too. I was no longer even the owner of my own shadow. There, time didn't pass. It just weighed heavy. I wanted to scream, wanted to disappear, but I knew nobody would hear me. Or worse, they'd hear and do nothing. That was where I'd have to survive or die trying. The first night was hell. The strong smell of sweet perfume and cigarettes stuck to me, and my stomach churned with the sounds of laughter and doors slamming. I wanted to disappear but had nowhere to run. There I learned the game wasn't easy. Grace took me to a small room with a cot and a cracked mirror. "Get used to it, because nobody gets peace in this place," she warned. "Will there be food?" I asked quietly. She laughed bitterly. "There is, but nothing comes free." That's when I understood that freedom and hunger walked hand in hand. The next day, I woke to knocking on the door. A dark-haired girl in a short dress and sunken eyes looked at me impatiently. "Get up, newbie. Time to learn the rules." My body still ached from the journey, but I got up slowly. She took me to a room full of women putting on makeup, fixing their hair, talking loudly. There, nobody was really friends. It was every woman for herself. An older woman called Miss Olga was the one in charge. "Here nobody does what they want, understand? You follow the rules, period," she said, adjusting a red scarf around her neck. "Men pay, you obey. Anyone who disobeys learns the hard way." I felt my stomach turn. My heart beat fast, but my voice wouldn't come out. It was as if my soul had been ripped out of me right then and there. The rules were clear and rigid. Nobody left without permission, nobody refused clients, nobody talked about what happened there. If someone tried to escape, "Well, let's just say their life ain't worth nothing," said the brunette beside me. Each new rule I heard felt like a shackle closing around me. I sat in a corner trying to shrink, but Grace appeared at my side. "You're gonna have to learn, girl. Here, there's no choice." I swallowed hard, feeling my whole body tremble. I just want to leave," I whispered. She laughed, but her look held no malice. "You think if it was easy to get out of here, anyone would still be here?" The truth hit me like a stone to the chest. I was trapped. The nights were always the same, dark, noisy, filled with the smell of alcohol and loud voices. I stayed huddled in a corner, praying quietly, asking to wake up from a nightmare that seemed to have no end. Some girls tried to console me, but I saw in their eyes that they too were destroyed inside. There, nobody dreamed. They just survived. I went days without eating properly, refusing the plates they offered me. The bitter taste of fear consumed me, until one night Miss Olga knocked on my room door. "Catherine, tonight you're gonna start working." My breathing failed. I trembled from head to toe. "If you don't, it'll be worse." It was at that moment I knew there was no way out. Hell had swallowed me whole. My whole body shook, my hands sweated, my heart beat so hard it felt like it would jump out of my chest. "Come on, girl." Miss Olga's voice was firm, impatient. I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone. "You gonna make me lose my patience?" she asked, crossing her arms. There, hesitation wasn't allowed. Grace pulled me by the arm and led me to a hallway full of doors. The smell of alcohol and cigarettes was even stronger there. "Breathe deep, Kath. Do what you gotta do and get out alive," she said quietly, as if trying to give me advice. I looked at her with eyes full of fear, but all I saw was resignation. That woman had given up fighting long ago. They pushed me into a small room lit by a weak yellow light. A man with a big belly and thin beard looked me up and down with a corner-of-the-mouth smile. My breathing stopped. "What you scared of, girl? I pay well," he said, laughing. My stomach knotted. The door closed behind me, and in that instant, my soul screamed. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back tears, trying to pretend my body wasn't mine, but my chest burned. My mind screamed. My instinct said I couldn't accept this. The man approached, grabbed my arm. My body reacted before my consciousness. I screamed, pushed him with all the strength I had, and ran to the door. My hand turned the handle, but it was locked. "Easy there, newbie." "Nobody leaves until I say so," the man behind me laughed. I clawed at the door desperately, feeling panic take over my body, but there nobody heard pleas for help. The noise drew attention. Miss Olga opened the door with Grace right behind. The man huffed, adjusting his belt. "That one needs to learn how things work," he grumbled. Miss Olga looked at me with cold eyes. "If you ain't good for this, you ain't good for nothing." My throat went dry. I knew I'd pay dearly for my refusal. I was dragged to a small room in the back where weak light barely illuminated the walls stained by time. The wooden floor creaked under heavy footsteps. My breathing was short. Thoughts scrambled. The silence of the place chilled me inside. There I understood that punishment came without warning and that fear would be my companion from that day forward. The night was long. My body ached, but worse was my soul. Time there seemed stopped, suffocating, as if each minute lasted hours. I huddled in a corner trying to find some remnant of strength within me, but even hope seemed to have stayed outside that door. And I knew in that moment that from then on, everything would be even harder. Day broke, but inside that dark room it seemed like night had never ended. The smell of damp wood and dust entered my nose and stuck in my throat. My body was heavy, every muscle ached. I wanted to get up, but something inside me seemed broken. I was no longer the same Catherine who had entered there the night before. The door creaked slowly. Light invaded the room and made my eyes burn. Grace entered, closed the door behind her, and crouched beside me. "Get up, girl. If you stay down there, you'll only make things worse." Her voice had a hint of concern, but was hard. I looked at her without strength to respond. She sighed like someone who had seen that scene many times before. "Catherine, you need to learn. Here it doesn't help to struggle, doesn't help to fight. You have to do what they order, period." Her words cut me deep. I wanted to scream, no, that I wouldn't bend, but inside me I knew there was no escape. There you either accepted or were crushed. With effort, I sat on the cold floor. My body trembled. I felt hungry, but not even hunger was greater than the knot that blocked my throat. "You want to eat something?" Grace asked awkwardly. I shook my head slowly. I knew that accepting a plate of food there meant accepting that place, but at that moment, my body needed it more than my soul. Miss Olga entered without knocking, as if my pain meant nothing. "Get up. Enough whining," she said dryly, crossing her arms. "The pain." My mind screamed. I forced myself to stand up. "Good." She smiled with satisfaction. "Now you're going to learn to work." And it was in that instant I understood that my life no longer belonged to me. The hours passed slowly that day. They made me wash floors, carry trays, clean the rooms. I did everything automatically, as if my body didn't even belong to me anymore. Every time I crossed the salon and saw the men's stares, I felt a cold shiver down my spine. There I wasn't Catherine. I was just one more among many. Grace watched me from afar, maybe hoping I'd surrender completely. And maybe there, deep down, I was already surrendered, because the truth was, I no longer knew what to expect from life. Memories of home grew more distant, and in that moment, I just wanted one thing: to survive one more day. Later, when everything was already dark, Grace came to sit beside me. She threw a cigarette in her mouth and looked at the starless sky. "You must be wondering why I'm still here, right?" I didn't answer. In the beginning, I also wanted to run, wanted to scream. But over time, you realize there's nowhere to go. I stayed silent, my chest tight. "Catherine, we only survive here if we know how to play the game. And like it or not, now you're part of this." The days began to blur together. I no longer knew if it was Monday or Sunday, if it was morning or night. Time inside there seemed not to pass. There were just the loud voices, the smell of cigarettes, the clinking glasses, and the fake smiles of women who, like me, were trapped in that world. That place swallowed us up, and without realizing it, I was being swallowed too. Miss Olga didn't like idle women. "If you don't want to work, you can leave," she'd say. But everyone knew that leaving wasn't an option. It was just a way to remind us we had no choice. And I came to understand that there it was better to be invisible than to draw attention. Those who tried to rebel learned the hard way. The main salon was a theater of illusions. Men came and went as if they owned the place. The strong smell of cigarettes and cognac mixed with the sickening perfumes of the girls who paraded among them. Some laughed loudly, exaggerated, as if laughing at themselves. Others stayed quiet, as if their souls had already left. I observed everything, trying to understand at what point we stopped being people. Grace kept watching me from afar. It seemed she wanted to protect me, but she herself had no power for that. One day she pulled me by the arm and spoke quietly. "Catherine, you need to understand that here nobody's going to save you. Forget the life you had before. This here is now all you have." I wanted to respond, to say that wasn't life, but something inside me froze, and for the first time I thought maybe she was right. The older women taught me the rules without needing to say much. Some tried to cling to small things to keep breathing inside there. One embroidered handkerchiefs, another kept a broken little mirror and put lipstick on it every morning as if it were a ritual. I just observed, trying to understand how they managed to keep going without falling apart. Maybe that was the secret, to stop feeling. The first time they forced me to sit at the bar was one of the hardest moments. My body froze, my mind screamed, but Miss Olga looked at me from afar with that cold stare, and I knew there was no escape. Men passed by, laughed, made dirty jokes. I stayed there, motionless, not knowing what to do. It was in that moment I realized I was no longer my own. The rooms were small, stuffy, always with sheets that never smelled clean. The floor creaked with every step, betraying any movement. Some girls stayed in there for hours, coming out with red eyes and drooped shoulders. With each closed door, a piece of someone was left behind. I didn't want to go in there, but I knew my time was coming. In the hallways, I saw younger girls arriving, some with scared looks like the one I had when I arrived. Others already knew what awaited them. Women who once were like me now trained the new ones, repeating the same phrases they had heard before. It was a cycle, a machine that never stopped. Over time, I learned to disconnect my mind, to leave my eyes empty, to smile without feeling. It was that or go crazy. What scared me was seeing that one day all the women there were like me, full of fear, anger, desperation. But as time passed, their looks became the same, dead. And I knew that if I stayed there too long, my look would fade too. In the kitchen, the strong smell of food mixed with the stench of old booze. I washed dishes in silence, listening to the conversations of the women around. Some laughed, others talked about a past that no longer existed. One of them, called Rita, looked at me and said, "You'll get used to it, Catherine. In the beginning, we think we'll never manage, but we do." I didn't respond. I didn't want to get used to it, but I no longer knew if I had a choice. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about escaping. I just wanted to survive one more day, one more night, one more week. If I could get through that, maybe one day I'd find a way to move forward. But deep down, I knew. Nobody left that place the same way they entered. Time passed, but I no longer counted days. I existed, but didn't live. The salon, the rooms, the kitchen, everything was an endless cycle where we learned to stay quiet, to suffer less. But that night I understood I still had much to lose. It was the day I was marked in a way I'd never forget. Miss Olga called me, her usual cold stare. "Today you're gonna learn for real." My body froze. "Sit there at the bar and don't embarrass me." My hands sweated, my head pounded, but I did what she ordered. I knew resisting wouldn't help. We had no choice. We just obeyed. The men laughed loudly, smelling of booze and sweat. One of them, dressed in a wrinkled suit, looked me up and down and smiled sideways. "This one's new, right?" My stomach turned. He approached, putting his heavy hand on my arm. I trembled but stayed there, motionless. That's how it all began. Miss Olga watched from afar. I knew any attempt to refuse would bring consequences. The man squeezed my arm, pulling me slowly. My chest burned with fear. I didn't want to go, but Grace's voice echoed in my mind. "Here nobody's gonna save you." And that night I understood what that really meant. I was taken to one of the back rooms, the smell of cheap perfume and booze mixed with the stench of grimy walls. My heart beat fast, my breathing stopped. I wanted to disappear, to vanish, but there was no way out. That night I stopped being who I was, and a part of me died. When it was all over, I stayed there, huddled on the bed, trying to breathe. My eyes were dry because even tears seemed to have given up on me. The silence was heavy, only cut by the muffled laughter from the salon. Grace entered, threw me a wet cloth, and helped me sit up. "Does it hurt?" I didn't respond. It hurts less with time. But I knew that pain would never go away. After that night, something inside me changed. I no longer saw myself in the mirror. I spoke less, walked slowly, obeyed without protest. My body stayed there, but my mind disconnected. Grace observed me as if she knew. "Now you understand," she said one day, without needing to explain more. And I understood, but I didn't accept. The salon continued the same, the routine repeated, but I was no longer Catherine. I was just one more. I sat at the bar, drank when they ordered, smiled when they expected, but deep down I felt nothing. And maybe that was the only way to survive inside there. Time kept passing, one day, 1 week, 1 month. After a year, I no longer remembered what my life was like before there. I didn't count days, didn't ask the time. The strip club was my prison, and at the same time the only world I knew. Fear no longer made me cry. It just existed like the air I breathed. Grace sometimes sat beside me, smoking slowly. "It's been 2 years, Catherine." She released smoke into the air as if time meant nothing. 2 years. I tried to remember what my house was like, my mother, my childhood, but everything seemed distant, as if it belonged to another person. It was as if the Catherine from before had been erased. Life inside the strip club went on always the same. The same songs played on the old radio. The same men returned every week. The same voices screamed and laughed. New girls arrived scared, just like I had arrived one day, but their looks changed quickly. Suffering became routine, and we learned to hide everything deep down where nobody could see. Miss Olga was always the same, hard, cold, controlling everything with one look. "Here there's no room for weakness," she repeated. And those who tried to escape, who thought of disobeying, quickly learned how the rules worked. I saw many women taken outside and return injured. Some never returned. I no longer asked what happened. The years kept passing, and without realizing it, I'd been there 5 years. My body had changed, my voice too. I spoke less, smiled less. It was as if time had molded me, made me what it wanted. But one thing never changed: the emptiness inside my chest, the feeling that I'd never get out of there. The younger girls began calling me Catherine, as if I were one of the old ones. And I was. Now I help the newbies understand the rules, not to get into trouble, to lower their heads when necessary. But deep down I knew I wasn't helping, I was just teaching them to survive. One night, while cleaning the bar, Grace leaned beside me. "You ever notice we never talk about the future?" I stayed quiet. "Because there is no future, Catherine. Inside here, we just wait." I waited for her to finish the sentence, but she just let out a tired sigh, and I understood. We just waited for time to take what was left of us. Time slipped through my fingers like fine sand. When I realized it, I'd been inside there 10 years. 10 years. The mirror reflected a face that was still young but with a tired look, without shine. New girls arrived with the same scared eyes of those who still believed there was an escape. I said nothing because I already knew. Almost nobody left there. The routine never changed. The same songs on the radio, the smell of cigarettes mixed with cheap perfume, men's laughter filling the salon. I already knew by heart the clients' schedules, Miss Olga's hurried steps supervising everything. Time there was a vicious circle where everyone spun on the same axis, but I no longer knew if I spun along or just waited for time to swallow me whole. Grace was still there. Unlike me, she never talked about leaving. It seemed she'd already forgotten there was a world beyond those walls. One day, while smoking near the window, she let out a heavy sigh. "You ever notice we don't dream anymore?" I didn't respond because I no longer knew what it was to dream. I only knew that life there was a road that had no end. It was on one of those nights that I noticed something different. A man who always appeared at the strip club began looking for me more than the others. He was different, spoke quietly, observed everything from afar, seemed to have patience. At first I thought he was just another one wanting to feel special, but he kept coming back every week, bringing me small things. "Here's something for you today, Catherine," he said once, leaving a plate of food near me. For the first time in years, someone called me by name without harshness. I didn't know if it was a game, if he just wanted something in return, but I began to wait for him without realizing it. I paid attention when the door opened, trying to see if he had come. It was dangerous to create any bond inside there, but maybe my hardened heart still kept a thread of humanity, and that thread was beginning to want to feel something again. Over time, he began to talk more, asked about my life before there, talked about the world outside. I listened in silence, trying to remember if that world had ever been mine. But with each story he told, a tightness was born inside me, because I knew that for me, that world no longer existed. I was already part of that place, and places like that don't give anyone back. On a calmer night, he stayed longer at the bar. He ordered a drink and struck up conversation as if we were old acquaintances. "My name's Arthur," he said with a discreet smile. "I think you've noticed I only come here for you." Those words scared me, because in that place nobody was special. But he kept talking with a calm I wasn't used to hearing. He asked about my childhood, my town, and I hesitated. It had been so long since I'd talked about that, I almost forgot where I came from. But without realizing it, the words began to come out. I spoke about the smell of my mother's cooking, the games on the dirt road, the time when I thought I'd have a different future. Arthur listened in silence, his eyes attentive as if each piece of my story mattered. The more I talked, the more it seemed that girl I once was still existed inside me. We talked for hours, and in that moment I felt like Catherine again, even if just for an instant. But destiny has a cruel way of throwing us against the wall. First it was light nausea that I thought was tiredness. Then the smells of the strip club began bothering me more than normal. My body seemed heavy. My head spun. One night, while trying to have dinner, a bitter knot formed in my mouth, and I had to run to the back. Grace looked at me from afar, her gaze worried. "Catherine, you expecting a baby?" My breathing stopped, and in that instant, I knew life would never be the same again. The signs accumulated around me like heavy fog. My body didn't feel the same. Tiredness, dizziness, nausea that caught me by surprise. At first I thought it was just weakness, but something inside me screamed it was more than that. I tried to ignore it, continue with the routine, pretend nothing was happening, but deep down I knew I was different. I ran my hand over my belly, still flat, trying to push away that thought. It couldn't be true. I couldn't be expecting a child. But each day that passed, the fear grew. A child meant change, and inside there, change was never good. If someone discovered, what would they do to me? What happened to a pregnant woman in a place where nobody could have a future? Grace already knew from the day she saw me nauseous in the back. She didn't ask, didn't pressure, just looked at me differently. "You can't let them find out," she said one night in a serious tone. I already knew that, but hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. I had no choice. I had to hide it as long as possible. I tried to hide it in every way, but my body betrayed me. In the salon, men laughed when I stumbled from dizziness. "Getting weak, Catherine," one of them joked. I gripped the glass tightly, trying to disguise it, but time passed, and my belly, once discreet, began showing signs. Loose clothes no longer hid so much. I knew soon I wouldn't be able to disguise it anymore. Arthur noticed my change. One night, he sat at the bar and looked at me for a while before asking, "You okay?" My breathing failed, but I nodded. He frowned as if trying to understand. "If you need anything?" He began, but didn't finish the sentence. "Help." The word stayed in my head because I knew I couldn't ask anyone for help. The months passed, and fear along with my belly. At first I could still disguise it, but Grace no longer hid her concern. "You don't have much time, Catherine. Soon Miss Olga will notice." The simple mention of her name made me freeze. I knew what happened to women who became a problem, and I was one step away from being a problem. I needed to get out of there. For the first time in years, that idea took hold of me, but escaping wasn't simple. Where would I go? Who would help me? I had nothing, nobody, just that suffocating doubt and a fear that grew each day. I breathed deep, feeling anguish consume me. If it was true, I had to protect my child no matter how. Time ran against me. My belly could no longer be hidden for much longer. Each morning, fear swallowed me a little more. I tried to act as if nothing had changed, but the looks around me began to be different. Grace no longer hid her concern. "You need to decide what you're going to do," she said one night while I pretended to clean the bar. But escaping there was impossible. I had nowhere to go. Miss Olga wasn't stupid. She saw everything, knew everything. If she hadn't said anything yet, it was because she was waiting. I knew that look of hers, that way of analyzing every detail without hurry. I felt my heart jump whenever I crossed her in the hallway. I knew that at the right moment she'd call me, and when that happened, I'd have no choice. On one of those nights, Arthur returned. This time he didn't seem like just a client. His look carried something different. He called me aside and spoke quietly, as if any word could be dangerous. "You need to trust me. I can help you." My body tensed. I wanted to believe, but didn't know if I should. Help was a dangerous word inside there. I stayed silent for a while, my heart beating fast. Could I trust him? If he was lying, it was my end. But if he wasn't, maybe it was the chance to save my daughter. "Can you promise me something?" I let out in a thread of voice. He frowned. If I have this baby, can you take it away from here? My breathing failed. It was the only choice I had. The months passed and my belly grew. I could no longer hide it. The older girls looked at me with pity. Miss Olga said nothing, but I knew she'd soon make a decision for me. I couldn't wait for that to happen. You sure about this, Catherine? Grace asked one night. I can't let my daughter grow up inside here, even if it means never seeing her again. The day of birth came on a cold morning. Pain took hold of me, making my whole body double over. Grace helped me, holding my hand tightly. I couldn't scream, couldn't draw attention. The stuffy room filled with sweat running down my face. Time stopped when I heard a weak cry echo through the room. My daughter had come into the world. She was small, fragile, with brown skin and closed little eyes. I ran my fingers over her little face, trying to engrave each detail. What you gonna call her? Grace asked quietly. I swallowed hard, holding back tears. Isabella, I whispered. Her name was Isabella, and I couldn't keep her. In the dead of night, Arthur found me in the back. My body trembled not just with fear, but with pain. Time was running out. I'll find someone to take care of her, he guaranteed. I promise. I gripped his hand tightly. She can't know where she came from. Promise me she'll have a normal life. He nodded, and in that moment I handed my daughter to the world without knowing what would become of me. I returned to my room with weak legs, empty chest. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands as if they were still holding Isabella, but she wasn't there anymore. The silence of that night seemed more cruel. Each shadow in the room reminded me I was alone. The emptiness inside me was greater than any pain I'd ever felt in my life. I closed my eyes trying to hold back tears, but they came with force. I knew I'd done the right thing, but that didn't diminish the pain. Daughter, forgive me. My voice came out in a broken whisper, swallowed by silence. I'd never know where she was, how she was, if one day she'd call me mother. And that uncertainty killed me a little each second. The years passed like a blur. When I realized it, it had been almost 5 years since Isabella had gone away. The pain never disappeared, but it hid inside me, mixing with the heavy routine of that place. Grace was no longer the same. Time left marks. Her voice became hoarser, her hair began to gray. We don't notice time passing inside here, she murmured one night, and I knew that was true. I was no longer the Catherine who had once entered that strip club. My face had changed. My eyes carried a weight that only those who survive inside there understand. But one thing remained the same: the desire to leave. I'd never said it out loud, but that desire grew inside me. Grace noticed. You think about it, don't you? She asked one day. I sighed. Every day. But wanting wasn't enough. Escaping there was almost impossible. Miss Olga no longer paid so much attention to me. I was one of the old ones, someone who knew the rules and didn't cause problems. That gave me certain freedom. I could walk the hallways without raising suspicion, observe who came in and who left. And that's how I began to notice something important. Not everyone was watched the same way. One night Arthur appeared again. I no longer expected him, but when I saw his face, my heart jumped. She's well, he said, as he always did. I felt myself swallowing hard. I never forgot her, I murmured. He stayed silent, but his look seemed to say he understood. And there, sitting at that bar with the smell of booze and cigarettes around, a certainty grew inside me. I couldn't die there. I had to get out. Arthur noticed my restlessness and breathed deep before continuing. She's living on a farm in a small town. She's growing up surrounded by good people. My chest tightened. I wanted more, but the words wouldn't come out. She's healthy, Catherine. She has a family that takes care of her. I felt a knot in my throat, but just nodded. I'd never be able to see her, but at least I knew she was far from this hell. I began observing the clients' schedules more, the doors that stayed locked and the ones left open. The new girls who arrived and the ones who disappeared. For years, I'd never thought about escape because it seemed impossible. But now, each detail seemed like a piece of a puzzle. If I wanted to escape, I needed to figure out how. Grace noticed my change. "You're different," she commented, looking at me with suspicion. "What's happening?" I breathed deep, choosing my words. "I'm tired, Grace. I can't spend the rest of my life here." She took a drag of her cigarette and released the smoke slowly. "Catherine, nobody leaves here." But I didn't want to accept that. For the first time in years, I wasn't going to accept it. That night, lying in bed, the ceiling seemed lower. The noise of footsteps in the hallway, the muffled laughter, everything gave me the feeling that the walls were closing in around me. I didn't know how, didn't know when, but inside me, a decision had already been made. I was going to get out of there, even if it was the last thing I did. It had been 15 years since I was inside there. 15 years living as a shadow of myself, without a future, without a name beyond what they gave me. But that night, for the first time, I felt hope. For months, I observed every detail, every gap that could give me a chance. And now I had a plan. If I didn't escape now, maybe I never would. I spent weeks studying the girls' and staff's schedules, noticing which doors stayed open and which were locked with keys. I saw when the liquor delivery guy got careless and left the back door ajar. I noticed that in the middle of the night, when the salon was packed, nobody paid attention to the basement. I just needed to be quick and silent. Grace noticed something was different. "You have that look of someone who's seen something or someone who's going to do something crazy," she said quietly while serving a client. I swallowed hard. What if I told you I don't want to die inside here? I let out almost in a whisper. She took a drag of her cigarette and looked away. "If you're gonna try, do it right." That was the only blessing I needed. The salon was boiling. Men drank loudly, music muffled any noise. My heart hammered in my chest. I'd waited for this night, the busiest of the week, because I knew nobody would miss a tired woman slipping through the hallways. The moment had come. I walked calmly to the back hallway. The weak lights made shadows dance on the wall. My hands trembled when I touched the basement door handle. I breathed deep and pushed slowly. The smell of old wood and mold invaded my nostrils. The door was open. I crouched between the stacked liquor boxes, trying not to make noise. Each crack of wood under my feet seemed like thunder in my ears. Outside, the laughter and muffled conversations continued, oblivious to what I was doing. My heart beat so hard I could hear it. I advanced to the exit door. The dark alley waited for me on the other side. I gripped the handle and prayed quietly. "Please, let me out of here." When I turned it, a creak cut through the silence. My body froze. I waited 1 second, then another. Nobody came. It was now or never. I stepped out quickly, throwing myself into the darkness of the alleys. The cold wind hit my face, bringing a different smell. For the first time in 15 years, I felt street air without the weight of that place. But I still wasn't free. I needed to keep walking before they noticed my absence. I walked aimlessly, my bare feet stepping on the cold ground. Each shadow seemed like a threat. Each noise made my heart race. But I continued, one step at a time, until I spotted a familiar silhouette on the corner. Arthur. He was waiting for me. He looked me up and down as if he couldn't believe it. "Catherine, you did it." My legs gave out and I fell to my knees, crying, coming out strong, without control. He crouched beside me, holding my shoulders. "We gotta get out of here before someone notices." I just nodded, because for the first time in 15 years, I was the owner of my own steps. I already arranged a way for us to get out of the city, he said quietly, helping me stand. My body trembled, but not with fear, with relief. There's a trustworthy trucker who's going to take us far from here. After that, we'll see how to move forward. My hands gripped his arms tightly. You're really doing this for me? He smiled slightly. I'm doing this because someone needs to break this chain. The truck shook on the dirt road, throwing dust up high as we left that city behind. The driver, a quiet man with a tired face, drove without hurry, as if time didn't matter. Arthur sat beside me, looking at me from time to time, but not saying anything. He knew I needed silence. After 15 years trapped in that hell, I still couldn't believe I was free. The night was dark, only stars illuminating the open sky. I rested my head on the hard wood of the truck bed, feeling the cold wind hit my face. My eyes burned from crying so much, but this time it was different. I wasn't crying from sadness or fear. It was relief. It was fear. It was the weight of an entire life flowing through my eyes. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew it was far. Arthur said he knew a safe place, a farm where I could start over. A family friend of his lived there. Good people, welcoming. They don't ask questions, Catherine. They'll just give you a place to stay, he guaranteed. I wanted to believe, but the fear that everything would crumble still haunted me. Did I still know how to live outside a prison? The hours passed slowly, and when the sun began to rise on the horizon, I realized I was getting farther and farther from that past. Arthur handed me a piece of bread and a bottle of water. You need to eat something, he said with a half smile. I took the food, but my stomach was still knotted. Thank you, I murmured. I didn't even remember the last time someone worried about me. When we finally arrived at the farm, the smell of fresh grass invaded my nose. It was a simple but welcoming place. The lady of the house, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, opened her arms when she saw us. So, you're Catherine? She asked with a smile. My body relaxed a little. Maybe I really could start over there. The first days were difficult. I'd wake up scared, thinking I was still trapped. The silence of the farm scared me more than the noise of the strip club. But little by little I got used to it. I began helping in the kitchen, taking care of the animals, feeling the sun on my face without fear. For the first time in years, I had a daily routine that wasn't torture, but something was still missing. I knew what it was. Deep down, I always knew. One afternoon, while washing clothes in the river, I looked at the water's reflection and whispered her name. Isabella. Arthur approached slowly. You still want to find her, don't you? I nodded, holding back tears. She's my daughter, Arthur. I need to know if she's okay. And in that moment, I knew my story wasn't over yet. The years kept passing, and I learned to live again. At first, each day was a battle against the ghosts of the past. The silence of the farm suffocated me, as if at any moment I'd hear the screams, the loud music, the forced laughter of the strip club. But time, little by little, taught me to breathe again. I wasn't the Catherine from the strip club anymore. I was just Catherine. I worked hard on that land, harvested coffee, planted vegetables, learned to care for the animals. For the first time, my hands served something that wasn't pain. Arthur stayed with me for a while, then left to try life in another place. But he never stopped sending me news. It was he who promised that one day, somehow, we'd find Isabella. And the years passed, 25 years to be exact. Gray hair came, wrinkles arrived, but the longing remained intact. Life gave me peace, but never took away the desire to reunite with my daughter. I didn't know where she was or who she'd become, but every night I looked at the sky and asked God that she'd been happy, that she'd had the life I could never give her. It was Arthur who brought the news on any given afternoon. He arrived with a crumpled paper in his hands, his aged face but eyes still carrying that light of hope. "I found her, Catherine." My heart stopped. My hands trembled as I took the paper. There, written by hand, was the name and address. My daughter existed, and now I knew where to look for her. The journey there was long. My body was no longer young, but my heart beat like a scared girl's. When I arrived, my legs weakened. It was a simple but well-cared-for house. In the yard, a young woman was talking with a child. My eyes filled with tears. It was her. Isabella had grown up. She had a family, and I didn't know if I should approach. My fingers gripped the fabric of my worn dress. Fear paralyzed me. What if she didn't want to see me? What if she looked at me like a stranger? But I needed to try. I walked slowly, my heart heavy in my chest. When I approached, she raised her eyes. Time stopped. "Ma'am?" she asked, confused. I smiled with a choked voice. "My name is Catherine." My throat closed. "And 25 years ago, I gave you the name Isabella." Her eyes shone, and in that same instant, I knew she understood. My girl, my daughter. Time stole much from us, but it didn't erase what connected us. My knees gave way, and before I touched the ground, I felt her arms wrapping around me. The crying came strong, without words, just feeling. After 25 years, I was finally complete. My fingers trembled as I touched her face. Each feature was familiar, as if my heart knew exactly who she was, even after so much time. Isabella sobbed, holding my hand tightly. "I always dreamed about you. I always had this feeling that someone was waiting for me." My eyes closed, allowing tears to flow freely. Destiny had never separated us. It just kept us until the right moment. We stayed there embracing until the child beside her moved, curious. "Mom, who is this lady?" My heart jumped. It was my granddaughter. Without thinking, I smiled through tears. "Sweetheart, this is my mother." Isabella held my hand. "And now, Mom, I'm never letting go. Life took so much from me, made me bleed, made me lose everything. But it gave me this moment, and that was enough. The past couldn't be erased, but the future was still ours." I looked up and held her face in my hands. "My daughter." I smiled through tears. "You never needed to ask for anything." And there, under the sky I'd looked at so many times in prayer, I knew I'd finally found my home. The days after the reunion were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt like I'd come back to life after spending half my life just existing. Isabella welcomed me into her house without hesitation. At first, I was still afraid of not fitting in there, afraid that after the emotion of the reunion, she'd realize I no longer had space in her life. But that fear soon went away. Isabella didn't let me feel like a stranger. She introduced me to her husband, a man with a gentle look and kind words, and to my granddaughter Mariana, a girl full of life and curiosity. On the first day, she came to me holding a drawing she'd made. "I made this for you, Grandma Catherine." Her voice broke me inside. I never imagined I'd one day be called Grandma. Arthur stayed nearby. He didn't want to stay in the city, but every now and then he'd appear bringing coffee and homemade cake, always saying he was just passing through. I knew he wouldn't really leave. His life and mine had intertwined in a way that was impossible to cut. "You finally made it," he said one day, sitting beside me on the porch. I smiled. "Yes, but I wouldn't have made it without you." The years passed, and I found my place there. I helped Isabella with the house, took care of Mariana when she started going to school. At first, my daughter wanted to compensate for lost time. She'd take me for walks, tell me childhood stories I hadn't lived, tried to put me in all the moments I'd missed. "We can't change the past, Mom," she said one day, holding my hand. But we can still enjoy now. And that's what I did. I learned to love being a grandmother. I made little dresses for Mariana, spent nights sitting on the porch telling stories I'd lived and others I invented. Isabella listened to me attentively, as if she wanted to record every detail. Time was no longer my enemy. Time was now my present. But life always charges its price. My body was no longer the same. The years of suffering had left their marks. Doctors said I needed to rest more, that my health was no longer strong as before. But how to rest when I had so much to live for? If God gave me this chance, I'm not going to waste it, I always said when someone tried to make me slow down. I still had so much love to give. Isabella insisted I live with her, but I knew I needed my own space. I didn't want to be a burden, I wanted to be a choice. So I got a simple little house nearby, close enough to see my daughter and granddaughter every day. In that home, I put photos of moments I kept in my heart, but the only photo I had of baby Isabella was the one in my memory, and nobody could take that from me. Arthur began spending more time around. He helped fix things in the house, brought fruit from the market, fixed the fence when needed. One day, while tending the garden, he looked at me and smiled sideways. We went through so much, didn't we? I sighed, cleaning my hands on my apron. We did, but we're here. And that was miracle enough. My granddaughter grew up fast, and each day with her was a gift. One day, while combing my hair, she asked, "Grandma, did you have a mother?" The question caught me by surprise. "I did, sweetheart." She frowned thoughtfully. "And did she comb your hair like this?" I smiled with teary eyes. "No, my daughter, but now I have you." And in that instant, I knew my past no longer defined me. Today, sitting on my little house's porch with the sun setting on the horizon, I look back and see a life that wasn't easy, but was worth it. I'm no longer the scared girl who was once torn from her own home. I'm Catherine, mother, grandmother, woman, and above all, I'm free. Life took much from me, but gave back everything that was mine by right. I'll never erase the past, but today I can say it no longer haunts me. Mariana runs through the yard, Isabella smiles at me, and Arthur adjusts his hat before offering me coffee. Happiness didn't come when I wanted it, but it came when I needed it most. And in the end, that was enough. The years passed, and today, with my completely white hair and skin marked by time, I look back without regrets. The pain no longer weighs so much. The past no longer haunts me like before. I learned that life doesn't give us choice over the pains we'll carry, but it gives us the chance to decide how we'll move forward. Isabella became a strong woman, a loving mother. My granddaughter Mariana is now a young woman full of dreams and with a shine in her eyes that reminds me of the girl I once was, before the world stole my innocence. I look at her and know the cycle of pain was broken. My daughter and granddaughter will never go through what I went through. That's my greatest victory. Arthur is still around. He never married, never had children, but he accompanied me until here. He says some people are family, not by blood, but by the path they choose to walk together. And that's what we did. "You think you would have done differently, Catherine?" he asked me one day. I sighed, feeling the wind hit my face. "I don't know, Arthur, but I know I did what I could. And today that's enough for me." Life wasn't easy with me, but it taught me the value of resilience. I was a scared girl, an imprisoned woman, a shattered mother. But today, I'm a loving grandmother, a free woman, a soul at peace. We don't always win the way we dreamed, but we win. Sometimes just being alive and having love around is already a great victory. If someone had told me back then that one day I'd be surrounded by my family, smelling fresh coffee and hearing laughter from those I love, I wouldn't have believed it. But the truth is, life has its own plans, and sometimes, even after a long night, day has to come. Life doesn't follow scripts, and time passes, takes what it has to take, and brings what it needs to bring. So if you're going through a difficult time, hold on tight. Endure one more day, because up ahead there might be a beautiful future waiting for you. Now, looking at this blue sky, I feel I fulfilled my mission. My story was marked by pain, but also by love, courage, and rebirth. And that's what I want you to take with you, that no matter how bad the night is, the sun always comes back to shine. If this story moved you, tell me here in the comments what you would do in my place. Do you think I made the right decisions? I want to know your opinion. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe. There are many more stories to tell. Our lives are made of struggles, but also of new beginnings. Thank you for listening to me until here. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone. Who knows, maybe it won't help someone who needs strength to move forward. Because in the end, we all just want one thing: to live with dignity and love. And always remember, no matter what life took from you, there's always time to start over. I'm proof of that. It's never too late to write a new ending to your story.